Call it to order again. All right, thanks everyone. I'll call this meeting to order at 8:01 a.m. Thanks for being here. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the secretary's report for our July 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. The link was in the agenda. I hope everyone didn't hear about any access issues, so hope everyone was able to read it. I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for July 9th, 2024. Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second? Thank you, Tim. Comments, corrections? All right, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of approving the July 9th, 2024 meeting minutes, raise your hand, say aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Anne abstains, and Steve Lemke too. Motion passes. All right, moving on to the main item for today's meeting, which is the review and approval of the draft FY25 work program and budget, which we expect to bring to the full commission in August for approval in time before our next fiscal year starts. So thanks, Nessa, for being here today. I know Nessa and Chris have worked to put together the budget as well as the work program that was included in the PDF packet that you received this for this meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Nessa and Chris to walk us through the highlights. I would just ask for, I think everyone's had a chance to see it, so walk us through the highlights or major changes or things you want to make sure you point out to us or get our feedback on.
And that's, let me start. I'll start with the work program, just to kind of give everybody an idea about what's changed and what's not. So really fairly minimal changes. The most dramatic one in terms of like an actual percentage cut or something is the cut to the emergency management planning grant. Federally, there was a 10% cut, and Vermont as a state really relies heavily upon funding a lot of its emergency management functions, and especially emergency planning through what's called the Emergency Management Planning Grant, which is federal money. The state puts remarkably little of its own money into its emergency planning. That's I will offer any opinion you like on that at some point, but not right now. So that translated at the RPC level. So depending on which RPC you were, a 20 to 30% cut. For us is about a 20% cut. It wound up being budget neutral because we're getting additional funding to support the development of hazard mitigation grant proposals to make the most of this funding that's available to the state in the wake of last July's flooding. And so, you know, this formula funding, every time we have a declared disaster, we get a certain formula amount of funds for hazard mitigation. The damage was so extensive last July that we're getting a lot. So anyway, so we'll be basically making up for that difference. So in terms of cash, it's neutral, but this is something that I know VAPTA, our regional planning commissions, I know we're gonna make a case, or anticipate. I'll be leading the effort among the RPCs. We're establishing a policy agenda now. We're gonna make an effort to restore this funding using state funds. We've flagged this issue for the National Association of Development Organizations at the federal level, and then we'll see what we can do to also talk to this, encourage the state to put more state funding in, so you don't have these swings as federal funds take effect, or federal cuts might take effect. The only other thing was we had the Municipal Technical Assistance Program that has ramped down. It is pretty much, we're supporting a few municipal projects in a few towns, but otherwise that program is ostensibly gone. And the Municipal Energy Resilience Program will be winding down, but we still have some funding there. Regional plan update is well underway. We're going to keep on pressing on in spite of the Act 250 reforms. We'll have to do some updates in the next couple of years to come, but we're in good shape. But but that's really it as far as the work program is concerned. And then I'll have Nessa go over the budget in more detail. But I want to talk to you a little bit about strategy. So compensation wise, what we're proposing is 3% increase across the board. And I would like to do more, but I don't want to, people plan their lives around their salaries. I don't want to artificially elevate salaries to such an extent that if we wind up having a cut in next year or future years, it takes people by surprise. So Gabby, she met with us Friday. We're talking about the possibility of like end of fiscal year bonuses once we have a better idea about how we're going to end the fiscal year, which should be strong. The other thing is that we got an relatively unexpected an additional $80,000, which for us is significant. This legislature provided to us in order to help meet the changes associated with the Act 250 reforms. But beautifully, they did not dictate exactly how we have to use that money. So that's awesome. But one of the things that we did was create space in the budget so that I've been working with Anessa on really looking at how, if in the event that this sometimes like one-time money or low probability money, how do we use that, but use it in a way that's sustainable over time, and that we don't artificially inflate our budget and capacity in a way that will ultimately result in a dramatic cut. So in the budget, you're going to see we still are providing allowance for like $50,000 for another graduate assistant or intern. But like last year, what I would ask for is just flexibility and using that. And like it's through that flexibility that we brought in UMass Amherst on a few different projects, including the four-town housing project. We're also allowing $30,000 for a special project as yet to be defined. And one of the reasons I want it to be as yet to be defined is we are doing that four-town housing charrette in September. It's kind of an experiment. If it's successful, one of the things I'm thinking about is possibly replicating that with another cluster of towns to help towns think together about how to manage housing. And then as far as we brought on board an intern, Anand Fideli from UMass Amherst. He's been doing fantastic. What we did was actually make him a full-time assistant planner on a limited term through September 2025. Limited term meaning that we'll see where we stand budgetarily. We may be able to extend that appointment out. But that's about $150,000 that if that was to go away next fiscal year, it wouldn't impact our core operation. So I just wanted to build in something of a buffer, as opposed to bringing on like yet another full-time planner who I couldn't be able to guarantee, a full-time, like somebody other than an assistant planner, bring somebody on who we may not be able to sustain in years going out. So I feel really good about like how we're looking from a sustainability perspective beyond this fiscal year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anessa to go into the other budget details. And Anessa, just hit the high points, the things you feel like they should know.
Yeah. So right from the top, in the revenue, we decreased to 3% for town assessments increase for the upcoming year. So prior was 4%. Now we went with the 3% of increase.
And that's because the consumer price index for the latest has dropped to 3%.
Yeah. Then we added some projects that came along this summer already. So you will see an increase in town technical assistance, some town planning updates. So there was some projects came along, towns and town plan and Grafton, right? Grafton, I think, something like that.
Okay, Putney.
Putney, right, Putney. So the regional stays pretty much the same. There was a 3% of increase in transportation, but it stays the same. So it's there. I don't know if I mentioned that last time. And that's for the revenue. For the expenses, as Chris mentioned, those pockets of safe space that we created is in a new line. And it's at the very last page. So it's where just the top of the page. And there's a housing infrastructure and community engagement. It's a 30,000 of expenses. So that's about it. Those are changes.
That's a number of people were not here at the last meeting. We're assuming healthcare, our health insurance increasing up to 10.5%. As we broke out Beamer's retirement costs, just to have, you know, to be able to show what that costs as a personnel item. And then I asked Vanessa to break out organizational memberships and sponsorships. That's not staff training or anything. This is like our membership in VAPDA, Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, our membership in National Association of Development Organizations, and then
LCT.
Yeah, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. So I just asked her, it's not a new expenditure necessarily, but I just wanted to break it out so that it was clear that we were that we have costs associated with those memberships.
Yep.
And that's
yeah.
really the gist of it. So
yeah, that's about it. You can see in comparison that we stayed pretty much the same in some expense lines, even decreased a little bit. I think we're in pretty good shape in equipment, so we just got the equipment for Anand. And yeah, so that's the bottom line increased from positive 19,000 to positive 73,000. So that feels good.
any questions?
Hey, Nessa, I just had one question. It looks like our contingency from last year was significantly higher than this year's. Do we feel, was it just an anomaly last year, or is there, we intentionally decreased? I'm assuming we feel like we have plenty of contingency with the 73,000.
It was a little bit of an anomaly, yeah, 170,000. In a cash wise, it feels pretty good right now. So it was sort of, you know, good guess for this year.
Okay, great. And I think, you know, we talked Friday, but just so everybody knows, I think we feel like we're in a good place cash flow wise as well.
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
We are probably in my 14 years, we're in a better position than we've been a few years now. And this is why, but just, you know, I'd rather err on the side of being conservative. That's why I really want to, you know, as we develop this budget, kind of looking out at what could happen. You know, whatever happens in DC, and this isn't a political comment, it's just a crapshoot, right? I mean, we're all watching if we have a split house again, right? You know, budget bills getting held up. Who knows what's going to happen? So it's almost regardless of administration. So, and then also just not knowing, you know, there's a lot of money coming into the state because of disasters, but the state's also going to be spending more. So just trying to take all that into account. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I think Stephen had.
Yeah.
I just have a couple quick questions. One, because I failed to make the last meeting. Is the ACCD money ongoing, or is it one time, the increase?
We don't know. I mean, the assumption is that that 80,000, I don't know, is that going to be a new baseline for us? This happened at the very end of the legislative session. So we're not
okay.
So I think there was recognition that the RPCs have a lot of lifting to do collectively and individually. So I don't know, but I'm sure we're going to make a case for it, because one part of the case that one of the things that we're going to be talking about at the director's retreat in September is being more not forward looking, but just really being kind of presenting a stronger position as far as like telling the legislature what we need in order for us to do the job they're expecting us to do. So I think we're going to make a stronger push to, let's get us even closer. Let's do what the formula for our funding says we're supposed to get. Because like we're limited in who we can hire and what we can do if the funding is, only occasional. And among all the RPCs, and I don't mean to go too deep into this, but you should just know that for all of us, it's really difficult to hire somebody. Lately we've been getting these pulses of money where we're supposed to kind of stand up and do work, over a 6 month or even 1 year period. For a lot of us, it may take us 6 months just to hire somebody. And so we can't meet what the legislature is saying we can do. And increasingly the directors are like, you could give us $1 million, but we may not be able to do what you're wanting us to do unless you give us the time to actually do it in. So that's a longer answer, Steve, but I just want you all to be aware of that context.
No, well, that goes back to the staffing issue, and as long as you're fully staffed at this point, you can at least respond, without having one foot in the hole to begin with. So the other question I had was, did we borrow any money? Years ago, we used to borrow money once in a while to make ends meet. Has that happened recently or at all?
No, last time we borrowed was last summer, and we paid it up successfully pretty quickly in September. So we ended the year without any outstanding loan.
And Stephen, just so you know, that was always because it wasn't invoicing on our end. It was payment on the state's end.
Yeah, that was due to that flooding last year in July, and pretty much all the agencies were out of their offices. Was quite significant delay.
Okay. Then on the expense side, I'm confused how you go from $5,200 in telephone cost to $400. Did you take out the phones or what happened?
The phones no, we did not take the phones out. We have just we consolidated the phone and internet with one provider, and it's just consistent fee, per month. So multiply that by 12.
Does that make sense?
So is the comparison with 4,800 versus 5,200, or is it truly $400 for the entire budget for 25 versus 5,224?
I see what you mean. It's
That looks like an error in this one.
Yeah, I think that should be 40. That should be 4,800, I think, and not 50, not 400.
It could be, but I think I did line by line and actually saw the actuals. But yeah, 400 is a little bit low. There must be a digit missing.
But also, Stephen,
Okay.
so we'll revisit that. But also, we created a relatively new IT and connectivity line down there with AC for 6,000.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's where, unless you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where we capture what our broadband costs are, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now broadband and phone are all one, as opposed to separate. We do have a phone system, which we have to do some maintenance on from time to time, but we'll double check that. Good catch.
Yeah, the phone's pretty much not
Okay,
being used a lot, so just by one or two couple people. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Stephen Chait.
Yeah, could I just ask, for all the cost of the Zoom meetings, is that covered by the IT and connectivity cost? And
I think Zoom is a one-time annual fee, and that's about it. And it's like close to $200, I think, and it's probably in supplies.
supplies? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, people become very reliant on it, but I have no idea what it costs. So I'm just curious where the cost was and what it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think, Stephen, we had all the equipment. I think with COVID, we actually added a line item. I forget which year's budget. So we had the owl and all the setup. So we didn't need the equipment. It was just the cost of the Zoom plus the regular cost of broadband.
Yeah, just the service from Zoom. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions about the budget? Tim, as the treasurer, did you want to add anything, or did you?
Sure.
You and your committee for reviewing it.
Madam Chairman, thank you. As Finance Committee Chair, I must admit there's not a lot of heavy lifting with the team of Chris and Anessa doing the legwork. All of you should be proud of their efforts. And with that, I would heartily recommend this executive board pass on to the full commission the 2025 work program and budget. I make that a motion.
Thanks, Tim. Jack seconded before I even had a chance to talk. Excellent. So we have a motion to approve the FY25 budget and work plan, a second by Jack. Any further discussion? All right, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Thank you. And any opposed? I mean, everyone said aye, so you can't oppose or abstain. The motion passes unanimously, so we'll bring this to the full commission for review and approval at our August meeting at the end of the month.
Thank you.
Which is, yeah, no, thank you, Anessa and Chris, for doing such a great job and for your presentation and being here today. This has been going really smoothly the past couple of years since you've been taking over. So we appreciate your hard work and effort. And hopefully, with October, we'll approve the budget and there'll be in plenty of time for getting things ready for the next fiscal year. That's awesome. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Oh, Steve Lemke.
With us 5 years.
Oh, wow. I like it. I'm glad you're sticking with us, Nissa.
Actually, actually, next Monday will be 6.
Oh, 6. Okay.
I would second everything that Tim said about the team. But Chris, here's a question. Are all RPCs created equal? In other words, do we does the WRC get any more money or something than another RPC, considering how much work and consultation that you seem to do that others may not be doing? I'm not trying to denigrate anybody else. I'm just wondering, is $80,000 what everybody gets across the board, or do we get more for one reason or another?
It's formula funding, so it's based on number of towns, population, and other things. That the formula we have established with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
Okay.
All right.
I can leave the meeting, right?
Yep.
You absolutely can, Anissa.
Everybody have a good day.
We'll move on to follow up on open meeting law application in our WRC committees. And so, I think as the new statute has been more deeply investigated and thought about, people have been sort of tweaking and people being lawyers at VLCT and the Secretary of State have been tweaking their interpretation and how they believe it should be properly applied. And so, and the RPCs themselves have been speaking internally. And I think the idea, Chris, is that we want to have one consistent interpretation across all the RPCs. And that interpretation should be supported by the attorneys at VLCT and the Secretary of State. So Chris has been working with that and talking to other RPCs. So I'll turn this over to you to sort of talk about the changes and or refined interpretations.
Yeah, in a nutshell, so I shared with you or Gabby shared with you in the email that went out about the exec board. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns has been working directly with the Secretary of State office because there's a real need for not only RPCs, but frankly, more importantly, the municipalities, as far as how to interpret the provisions of what's a rather awkward law. And so in a nutshell, with the what Vermont League of Cities and Towns, their council developed an opinion with the Secretary of State, basically saying that it's not the host body, its functions, in our case, like the full commission, or in a town's case, the select board, which may be clearly non-advisory because of the different things that it's responsible for. In our case, it's solely budget, but that the subcommittees and other entities created by the primary body should be viewed as far as like, what is it that they do? And if what they do is clearly advisory, then you can treat them under the open meeting law statute as being advisory. So that's the way all the other RPCs are now interpreting this. Devin Erie, who's the director of Rutland Regional Planning Commission, is the new VAPTA chair. and he was engaging with Ted Brady, who's executive director at VLCT. And basically what VLCT is that what we're asking of each other is the RPCs is we, a lot of towns reach out to us to make sense of this. So, of what how the open meeting law applies. And so we just want to make sure that we're both on the same page, that is the VLCT and the RPCs, and by extension, because of their engagement with the Secretary of State's office, Secretary of State. There's no formal MOU or anything like that. It's just conversations happening between the staffs of the agency and the VLCT. They're asking that we be consistent not only in our interpretation, but then also among the RPCs. It'd be really good if we could all kind of approach things the same way, which makes sense. And so not seeing any risk exposure. This is, or I shouldn't say any real. I don't see any. I guess somebody could always say, make a case someplace, but it seems like everybody who's in a position, apart from a court, is good with this interpretation. So, and so too, from honesty, we're a compliant state. So if somebody was to successfully make an argument that, hey, that entity, and I'm talking RPCs, I'm talking towns or whatever. If an entity is showing a good faith effort to conform with the law, and there's a disagreement, like with the Secretary of State's office, on how it's being applied in a certain circumstance, all the Secretary of State's office is going to do is ask, hey, can you come into compliance? Unless, of course, right, there's a demonstrable pattern of abuse or something, in which case the Secretary of State would ask the Attorney General to bring a suit. So, this law's application is very fresh and new, but I think we're in a good position to basically resume functioning as we had, with the fully remote meetings. And for the advisory committees, the only 3 exceptions would likely be the full commission, the executive board. And even while brownfields might be interpreted as being advisory, I would say it really is because they're advised on some things, but in other cases, like for assessment, they make the budget determination. So it's really non-advisory. So I would suggest that if you guys are open to it, kind of repositioning ourselves to say full commission, exec board, and brownfields committees have to function under the non-advisory committee rules. All the rest of our committees, assuming they have no budgetary decisions, can be treated as advisory. Is that a fair summary there, Gabby?
Yep, that's exactly right.
So I guess the proposal is, well, Gabby, what would you like the proposal to be?
Well, I think the proposal is to be consistent with the RPCs and the advice we've been getting from VLCT and the Secretary of State, that, the decision-making bodies, the non-advisory bodies are full commission, obviously, executive board, brownfields committee, and the remainder, unless something changes or is altered, the remainder of the committees be treated as advisory, and the new open meeting law rules be applied as such. So, I mean, I don't know that we need a vote, but I just want to make sure everyone, when you get feedback, and make sure as we apply the open meeting law this way and interpret this way, given the guidance we've received, is everyone okay with that? Yeah, Bonnie, did you have a?
Oh.
Okay, I just saw the hand. You're just like, sure, all good. All right.
Okay, so if everybody agrees with us, Jack, in your case, you could go back to operating the way you used to.
So I think we're all good with operating this way, unless, something changes in the legislature moving forward. And we'll proceed as such.
Hmm.
All right. Okay. Thank y'all. Let's see.
Dover Town Plan.
Yep, we're moving on to the Dover Town Plan approval. The Planning Coordination Committee held a hearing in July on the Dover Town Plan. We then had a meeting to review both the comments received during the hearing, as well as to review the town plan and make recommendations. You'll see the review, the weaknesses and strengths and comments of the Dover Town Plan. Overall, it was an extremely strong town plan. And so based on that, I would recommend, I'll just make the motion as chair of the PCC, that the executive committee approve the Dover Town Plan as adopted on June 4th, 2024, and confirm Dover's planning process. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jim. Everyone, good. Any comments or thoughts about the recommendations or review or the hearing? Hearing and seeing no comments. Oops, Stephen?
I just, I think that, Matt did an incredible job with, the town of Dover and with their plan. And the quality of the plan as written reflects the quality of his work. Because my impression is he wrote a good part of that for the town. And that shows in the quality of what was presented. So it's a bit of a change from the past as to how I think these documents have gotten written. But if this is the standard going forward, I think towns have a great deal to look forward to in terms of their town plan updates. So,
Thanks. Any other comments?
I'll convey that, Stephen.
Oh, Anne?
Could you just say more about what his role was as New Finning's about to start their town plan process?
And I think, Chris, maybe you should speak to that, because I didn't know that we had an exact discussion, but I believe that Dover hired the regional commission.
I mean, first and foremost, we'll provide whatever support the town planning commission wants us to provide, right? So if that means drafting language, if it means reviewing language, that's really up to the town. And the other thing, when I came on, this is not a complaint. I just want to tell you about what's transpired over the last 15 years. When I first came on, frequently I would hear about the Wyndham Regional Plan for the town of X, or the Wyndham Regional Zoning for the town of X. Newfane was famous for that, because there was an effort when I first came on to get rid of zoning in Newfane, or repeal what they had passed. And we really make it clear that all we do is support municipal planning processes. We do not provide plans for the towns. That the towns have to have utter and complete ownership of whatever it is they want to adopt. So never ever wanted to come across that it's the Wyndham Regional Commission plan for a town. So, and the answer is it's whatever the planning commission says it needs us to support, of course, within the context of the grant and what's in the statements of work. But whatever town plan we do, it's going to be, what they make of it. So I will convey the kudos on Dover to Matt, but I'll also just say that, that's the town planning commission too, right? Just, the work that Matt did. So ultimately, the end product is whatever the planning commission and ultimately the town approves. So that long answer, man, but that's the planning commission's not off the hook no matter how awesome our staff are.
I think the difference I wanted to identify was in the past, these the writing and the presentation was seen as done by a volunteer commission for the most part. This report had a professional tone to it that I think Matt was able to insert. He didn't change the substance, but the presentation was, to my mind, was more professional. And when I read the plan, the first thing I wanted to ask, the first question I was going to ask was, did they hire a consultant to write this for them? And it turns out, in a sense, the answer is yes. Matt took what they gave him and he wrote the report, and the quality of that shows. And I think it's to the benefit of the town. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really fortunate with our staffing, what's been built here. And I want to do everything possible to keep everybody here.
I think we're all behind that one, Chris, so as usual, if there's anything we can do to help with that, I think bring it to us. All right, with that, I think the answer is, Anne, you should definitely have the Planning Commission reach out to WRC. Any other comments before we vote? The motion is to approve the Dover Town Plan and confirm their planning process. All those in favor, raise your hand. And everyone approved it. Motion was unanimous. Motion passes. Dover's town plan is approved. Thank you all. All right, moving on to nominations, and I just we put this on again because as a reminder, we have some vacancies to fill. Tim will be departing. I know I sent some emails out this morning about that. As well as there will be some vacancies on the executive committee. Or executive board. And so I had some ideas, and I'm going to reach out to some individuals who I think, have been active participants in the committees that I've been on. But if anyone has any recommendations, please email me and let me know. I will reach out to those individuals. You have a better sense of who might be appropriate and, regularly shows up for and is engaged in, the regional commission based on the committees that I wouldn't know about. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. I'll reach out to them. But we will be taking nominations at the end of August. And of course, we'll always take nominations from the floor.
And I'll be providing, we'll be getting out, I guess today, Gabby, I'll send again to you just the request for nominations. It's the same kind of request that we did when Carolyn was chair. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself the contact because we don't have a chair per se for nominating now. Jack, you had volunteered to kind of help, because the only other member we have right now is a brand spanking new commissioner who won't necessarily know who the individuals are. So I'm going to staff this, but I really, really appreciate Gabby doing the outreach. I like to keep separation between me as staff and then who my bosses might be. So really appreciate Gabby doing outreach. But we've put our heads together on who might make a good next treasurer, who might be a good addition to the executive board. Jack, do you know, I know that you were wanting to retire. I know you had talked about, I'm trying to remember if it was with the after town meeting or through next August. Do you know where you landed on that? Am I maybe mischaracterizing that?
I really haven't landed yet. I'm in my final year. It's a question of whether I'll go to the town and say I'll accept an interim appointment through the end of the fiscal year or whether I'll just stay through the end of the fiscal year. I think part of that will depend on whether we get anybody who steps up that wants to be PRC chair. And if they can step in and be active by March, I may leave then. And if not, I'll stick around a couple of months.
Okay. So for now, we should leave you though as a nominee for the exec board for starting this fiscal year.
Yeah, I guess so. My just thought was the sooner we pick a new chair. I hate to sound like I'm patting myself in the back here, but
No.
the sooner I can step down and maybe work with them to take over, because I just stopped to think I've been chair for like 12 freaking years. That's a long time. So I guess I have some institutional knowledge, even if things have been quiet the last couple of years.
Now, if you're willing to
I'd
do
say
that,
so.
to make a transition like that would be great because we could work on that over the coming months.
Yeah, we'll appoint you, Jack, and then with the knowledge that at the right time, you can step down.
Yeah, I was a big buff on succession planning back in the days when I actually got paid for working.
All right, I think that's all we had in that, Chris, right?
Yes,
Okay, great. So no decisions, just put a call to action out there. All right. Next up is committee appointments. We have a new representative from Winhall, and he has put his recommendations for committees as energy, transportation, and finance. So we have somebody on the hook for finance, which is not on the hook, I shouldn't say that publicly, but who is willing to volunteer for finance, which is great. I believe he had two. So my suggestion would be that we appoint Eric Moses to finance and transportation, unless, Jim, you had a dire need for energy, which you usually don't. Okay, you're shaking your head no. Excellent. So is everyone okay if we appoint, I'll make a motion to appoint Eric Moses to transportation and finance. I have a second from Tim. Thank you. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Thank you. It's unanimous. We will reach out to Eric and let him know he's been appointed to those committees, and let staff and the chairs of those committees know. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to give his executive director's report.
All right. So as I mentioned, Anand Fideli is now a full-time assistant planner. One of the great things about this is if you look at our staffing, we're an upside down pyramid as far as we have a lot of senior staff and almost no junior staff. So having Anand serve as an assistant planner, he's done a fantastic job so far. Knows just the right questions to ask, takes direction well. Mike Mike McConnell is his direct supervisor, which helps me. Also gives Mike that supervisory experience, and he'll collaborate with me. But the great thing is that we really needed an assistant planner to help support the senior planners, and this will be an excellent opportunity for Anand to. I imagine there's a graduate degree in his future, so this will be a great opportunity for him to kind of build up his skill set. So very, very happy that this worked out. And this really came about as a result of our building a relationship with UMass Amherst, because we went through faculty to get this out to students. So we're going to continue to build that relationship so we can create that pipeline into WRC. And I make just as a reminder, the UMass Amherst program is and actually Anand came to us from a sustainability curriculum, but that's closely related to planning. But they have a regional planning and landscape architecture program, so it's a really important connection to have. I was asked by VAVDA to represent the regional planning commissions on the county and regional government stakeholder technical advisory group of the Act 118 County and Regional Government Study Committee. I'm not taking a position in either way, but I felt like I offered myself up because I do have a master's in public administration. I'm a public administration geek, and I've worked in about every form of government in terms of, like Vermont with, no county government and non-home rule Dillon law state, New York, where it's county government and home rule state, and then strong county government in other states. So I've kind of been able to see a lot of different perspectives, and I've done a lot of thinking about it just in terms of function and capacity of different models. So my intent is just to not take a position on whether counties are good or regional government is good, just to really be an advisor, good advisor to that regional government study committee that is actually composed primarily of legislators. So any questions about that? Tim?
No, I just wanted to let you know that as the legislative chair for the Vermont Clerks Association, I will also be on that committee.
Great.
And feeling like I'm serving two masters with my regional planning commission experience and with my local experience. And I also have no conclusions about what should happen. I know that something needs to because there are unmet needs out there.
Yeah, that's great. Great, Tim. Look forward to working with you.
Thank
I
you.
just want to add one thing if I could. Just if this is a topic that person is of great interest to me, and if you could just keep us apprised at the executive committee meetings, I would really appreciate
Sure.
knowing what's going on, and if there are opportunities for any of us to give testimony.
Sure. And all this has to be open. So
I know, but keeping track of all of it is.
no, I know. But if you want, I imagine if you'd like, you could probably get on like a general mailing list if you want to know when the meetings are happening. So I'll send you, after the meeting, I'll send you the, I'm just gonna make a note to myself. Contact info. If anybody else wants to just email me and I'll refer you to the person who's actually managing this, the advisory committee and, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Tim?
Just a further aside on open versus not, I'm already serving as the chair of the summer study committee on the tax sale and other issues associated committee. And we've been bounced around by several government offices, whether we're open or not. And finally, after asking the Attorney General's office, we're getting an advisory opinion from the Secretary of State's office. And it feels like there's really not any unanimity about whether we are subject to the open meeting law or not. I mean, I feel like we ought to be open, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a new complex law. It seems to me it should be open too. All right. And then I used to be, for a long time, been on the executive committee of the Friends of Conti National Wildlife Refuge. That has now changed to what's called now the Connecticut River Watershed Partnership. And this is representative of the fact that there's an effort underway. Steve Olympke is aware of this through Connecticut River Joint Commissions, and I'm 99% sure I talked to you guys about it before. There's federal legislation pending to create a Connecticut River Watershed Partnership Act that would basically be modeled after the Delaware River Partnership Act. It wouldn't be regulatory, but what it would do is really look at how to coordinate federal, cross-federal agencies and programs, activities in support of the Connecticut River watershed. And so this newly revised watershed partnership group is an effort to bring together nonprofit organizations, federal agencies, state agencies, and then the main role I've been playing for years is trying to make the case for bringing municipalities, regional commissions, COGs, other councils of government, other entities into the fold, because municipal and regional government generally has been totally absent from these conversations, not because they've been kept out or kept away, but again, it goes back to that capacity issue, like who actually has the time to engage. So I was asked to serve on both the executive board and steering committee, and I think that's a really good position for us. And I found myself kind of in the position of bringing into the conversation both the Vermont Regional Planning Commissions and the New Hampshire Regional Planning Commissions. And then separately, I've been in a lot of conversations with my counterpart at Franklin Regional Council of Governments, exploring the possibility of federal legislation to provide funding for regional planning commissions, regional planning associations, councils of government throughout the Connecticut River watershed to help support our conservation, watershed, flood, and other planning. So no idea if that'll ever pan out, but at least the great thing is now we're starting to talk about it as a watershed region, and our ability, I think, to try to bring in more federal resources into the issue is only going to increase if we approach it as a four-state effort as opposed to a state-by-state effort. And if you think about the size of the New England delegation relative to the, because a fairly, a relatively small region of the country, but a lot of representation, that could be really good. We're also bringing increasingly New York into the conversation. Why? It's because they directly are impacted by what happens at the mouth of the, where the Connecticut meets the Long Island Sound, and what happens in the Connecticut River hugely impacts the sound. So increasingly bringing New York into the conversation. The last but not least, you guys may recall I was participated in a summit, the Binational Summit, a large-scale landscape connectivity summit. I reached out. One of the things that came up in the breakout groups, consistent across all of them, was need to build local capacity. So I'm going to be engaging in conversations over the coming months about having a conversation, organizing a conversation, not us organizing it, but having a conversation among municipalities and regional planning commissions or counties or whatever, or what would constitute like a county scale planning in both the United States, the Northern New England states, New York, and the Canadian provinces to really explain what the responsibilities are and what the challenges are for when it comes to municipal and county governance and planning capacity to do large scale landscape conservation and connectivity work. Because what I find is the NGOs, the state governments, the federal government say, I'll talk about there's a problem, but they don't understand what it is. And so the idea is to support the creation of a report that explains what that is, because I can't tell you how many times I'm in conversations where people just do not understand that, like, it's for New England as a whole, we can only do what we're funded to do. And so if you expect us to be engaged deeply in a conversation or policy making, but we don't have the funding to support staff time to do that, it's not going to happen. So that's the point that we're trying. Same thing for municipalities. They need the support, oftentimes of COGS or regional planning commissions, others, to support those kinds of conversations. So really excited about that too. And as far as like landscape scale planning, the biggest going on in the world right now is the Rockies in the U.S. going up into Canada. There's been another major effort in the Carpathians in Europe. This collaborative, this area is planning in the Northern Appalachians going into Canada and the Maritimes. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's a really big deal even on a global scale. So how does that relate to WRC? Ultimately, it's all about how the heck do we get resources to do landscape conservation planning at our scale and be able to support the towns in doing it at their scale. So it's kind of, again, going swimming upstream to try to create the conditions so we downstream, we can have the resources to do what we need to do. And that's all I've got.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris. And thanks for serving on these various committees or advisory groups. I'm assuming these are that you're not feeling overwhelmed work-wise, and that these are things you want to, that you want to, I mean, it sounds like the government one is, stakeholder technical advisory group is certainly something that's right up in your wheelhouse. But I think, let us know if you're starting to feel like you're getting overwhelmed or need additional help.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to make sure you stay as part of our, sustainability as well.
Well, again, the reason for all of this is it's not just my interest. It's like, in order to get us the resources to better serve our town, this is the only pathway I see to do it. We got to go upstream and try to create the conditions, right? So that's the point. So it's not just for fun, doing this stuff, because there's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen locally. But it's kind of like the river corridor bill last year, right? With one bit of legislation, we can do more through that in terms of, life and safety in river corridors than, trying to work with 27 towns on 27 separate river corridor policies, and how on earth do they enforce those and all that kind of stuff. So that's just an example. But we appreciate everybody's support.
Yeah, Steve Lemke.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to echo your participation on the Connecticut River Watershed Partnership, because as Ann was pointing out, a lot of us are interested in a lot of things, but there are a lot of things out there that we can't keep track of. And I think everything I see you doing is bringing some of the darker corners of like the Conti and everything else that's sort of out there, but nobody can explain it, into a more mainstream, literally and figuratively, thing for the Connecticut and other things as well. So I think anything that you're doing to make this regional 4 states, including New York and stuff, the better we have an opportunity to get funding and a better opportunity to take it back to our towns and say, this is what's happening. So anyway, congratulations and thanks.
Thanks. I'll give the sentiments. Thank y'all. So I think, Chris, the takeaway is you have our support, and thank you. All right, on to committee chair reports. Is there anything that committee chairs want to specifically bring to the executive committee? All right, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to review of action items.
Jack, I guess I'll be going to that for a hearing. Alyssa will be out on medical leave, but I'll be going to that for us.
Okay. And I think this is one of our action items, I think, is we're gonna, I think, reach out to you, Jack, and, you know, we talked about this before, but we're gonna start initiating, sort of a regular update at full commission meetings about the project review committee, things that are going on. It seems to be really engaging. People enjoy hearing it, and certainly I think the projects that are of regional significance, we're going to be hoping that you can bring them up to the full commission for comment. And I
Yeah.
know, you know, we're not going to hang you out to dry, Jack, although you're well adept at explaining everything in understandable terms about what's going on with the project review committee and the projects. But I think, you know, there would be an opportunity for staff to help you out on that.
Yeah, Alyssa will provide a report for you, Jack.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it's been really quiet on project review for a couple of years now. And I don't see much on the horizon that's going to change that.
Well, now that you said that, of course it will.
Well, hopefully, but generally development means economic progress, and we just haven't been seeing that.
Yeah. Well, we'll hold out hope, Jack. All right, that's one of the action items. I think we still sort of have the shared services that's out there. But sort of pushed, you know, sort of not at the top of the stack yet. So that's a review of action items. Anyone wants to add any action items, let me or Chris know. You know, as usual, if you want to bring a topic to executive committee or action items, just let us know. It's open to everybody.
The only other item I've got is after we get past our annual business meeting, bringing back to you guys the conversation about kind of revisiting our primarily natural resource, environment, and energy and community development committees, looking at kind of their efficacy and focus and staff support. How do we make the most out of the limited time that we've got? So I'll bring that to you probably in like September.
That sounds good. Thanks, Chris. All right. And with that, Jim, thank you. A motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Thank you, Anne. Non-debatable motion. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. That's unanimous. We are adjourned 1 minute early, 8:59. Excellent work.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. And good
Have
luck
a good
tomorrow if you're
day.
participating in the voting, counting, and elections.